Welcome to On Off It, where each week a stand-up comedian brings on superstar guests and goes over what they're on and what they're off. Today's superstar guests, who are you?
My name's Hannah Ferguson.
What do you do?
I am the founder and CEO of Cheek Media, which is basically, if you care about politics in any way, shape, form, size, I'm talking about progressive commentary. I'm very open about my views. I'm very subjective about my views. But if also you're not into politics, come along for the ride anyway. It very much is a culture and political space.
Do you like the CEO moniker?
No. No, like, I think it's a ridiculous title. Like, I'm kind of like, can I just be founder? Like, what is the title? Especially when for a long time, it was just the CEO and they were like, and how's the team? And I was like, it's just me, actually. So the CEO thing is like such a wank in that context, right? You're kind of just like, I'm here, I guess that's the title. Yeah. But it's because everyone who's like a founder likes to be like, I'm a founder. And I'm like, oh, well, I just run an Instagram page, just doing pretty well. Like, it's a bit random.
I'm doing pretty good. Well, I've been admiring your work from afar for a long time.
Same, and we have the same name, Fergus.
Yes,
Ferguson.
Ferg.
I just felt like a connection to you.
Yeah, well, I would say your use of Ferg is soul and valor because it's a surname, whereas I am an original.
Yeah, I'm so sorry. I was not trying to take the crown. Just to be so clear, I was establishing a connection, but in no way was I saying gold medal in the Ferg department.
Do you go by Ferg?
Yeah, actually a lot, like my school jerseys and stuff.
Yes. I had Fergalicious on the back of my...
Oh my God, I was debating whether to do that. I just had Han Ferg, which no one calls me, which is kind of weird that I decided that for myself. Ferg was more likely to be the case. Yeah. But Fergalicious was like my top two decisions and I didn't do it. I was too scared.
Was this always the vision? Because for me, you came onto my feed and it was like, you're here. It was like, bam, you know, or was it a slow bubble or was it like, okay, I'm CEO,
It was kind of a slower burn. I started Cheek in 2022 I started Cheek in 2020 with two co-founders. And at the time, it was kind of like a hobby that we did together. But then as Cheek grew, I knew I wanted it to be my full-time job, whereas my two co-founders were very much of the view that like they wanted to step away and continue their full-time jobs. They didn't want to monetize the business. And I was really passionate about this political commentary and this new media space that was emerging. So I kind of took the risk, moved to Sydney 3 years ago, took it full-time by myself and just went for it. And so I think a lot of people have found me, and it always feels like when people say they found me, it was at a particular moment. Yes. So some people say, I really found you around the referendum. I really found you around this election. I really found you around, when, the Me Too movement in Australia. Like there's always different points where people feel like, and I think the compliment I take from my work is that people feel like they found me at a moment and it was just there then. Suddenly they were in the Cheek world. It wasn't like a slow burn. It was like a bam, now I follow and now they see my face every day. Yeah. So I think it means that like when people kind of come across me, it's highly engaged, which is really I take as a compliment for the work we do as well. So
are those two co-founders, so they're not with the organisation anymore? No. Is that like a Pete Best situation where they're like, let me back in?
No, actually, it was very much like, they were very fulfilled with the work that they were doing and kind of wanted to separate out and wanted me, like were happy for me to take the business full time and take the risk and to monetize. And I think it was very much just like an ideological kind of separation of what Cheek was. But I was always the person that was most passionate about the content creation side of things, I think. But yeah, no, it was, I did kind of maybe expect that might happen and that we'd reform, but no, it's always just now since the last 3.5 years has been me.
When was the moment where you're like, okay, Cheek's going to work?
The moment that I took the risk and moved to Sydney was when I got a book deal. Okay. And we hit 50,000 followers. So that all happened in the space of about a month. And that was at the end of 2022. So I've been doing Cheek full time since January of 2023. And it's not even that I thought Cheek's going to work. I thought, well, it has to work. I've taken a huge career risk, left behind like a law pathway for me and thought, well, this is everything now. And it was the year of the referendum too. So I knew that there was going to be this big runway where I really wanted to get involved in and step up what I could offer too. Yeah.
The new media voices are even having punters on the podcast last week. I know you're friends with him. Yes. A lot of it did come out of that referendum. Yeah. Why do you think that was?
I mean, I think that it was a very fragmented time in Australian politics. And I think we haven't ever sort of unified after that. Like, I think that was one of the moments that felt, after Scott Morrison lost the 2022 election, I feel like there was kind of this like unified nation around like, we generally didn't want Morrison. Like, I think that even if you are a conservative voter, you weren't a huge fan of him. Yeah. And I think that then leading into the referendum, there was this like absolute splintering and a real rise in Australia's sort of information campaign wars where suddenly you've got like groups like Advance Australia that are coming out of the woodwork and financially backing a lot of really kind of harmful causes and harmful messaging. And we've never really recovered from that. So now we've seen like Pauline Hanson's rise, One Nation's rise. We're still seeing these information campaigns really playing out that are fragmenting, you know, creating these cultural wars, really entrenching these divides between classes, between, you know, on different ideologies, but also just like culturally, there's a lot more division and harm at the moment. And I think that the referendum almost was one of the big catalysts for that.
Do you get people come up to you in the street with stories? Because I get that a little bit where people be like, oh, Ferg, you should talk about this. Do you have that a lot, like at cafes? Like, oh, Hannah, holy shit, can you talk about?
Absolutely. And it's devastating to me in many ways, because what I'll have is, and sorry, I don't mean people coming up to me and saying
devastating.
It's more devastating because people, it's actually messaging a lot where people say, this doctor in my rural town has done this. Can you cover it? And I'm like, I'm not sure that you know how big the newsroom is here. Like right now, as of today, when we're recording this, it's 2 people full time. So I just can't cover more than like 2 things a day. But it's also so beautiful that people care so much about, you know, what we can do and what we can offer to like political discourse, that they're like, Hannah, if you covered this, everything would change. And I'm like, I'm not sure that's true, but I can try my best. Like,
we'll talk about the doctor in Wagga Wagga.
But it's like, I'm from Orange, so I also kind of get, you know, I went to high school in Orange, I grew up in like Southwest Sydney.
I grew up in Geelong.
Really?
Yeah.
Then I spent 6 years in Queensland. Like, I've kind of been in a lot of different political environments, a lot of different social environments throughout my childhood and into adulthood. And I love that. I think it's probably part of the reason we do the work we do. Because, like, I think in many ways, the shared, like, nature of our job, I think, is reading the room. Right? Like, I think what comedy does and what a lot of political commentators are expected to do is understand the social feeling and to be able to speak back to people and make people feel connected and like they're part of a community and they're part of something, right?
Would you ever identify as a stand-up? Because I know you've done live shows.
Yeah, I would love to.
Because the Venn diagram's crazy of this new media generation where it's like people doing live shows, you know, it's online, there's...
I would never identify as a comedian or like as doing stand-up, but it's really interesting. Every piece of feedback I've ever gotten from my live shows, like my live national tours and things, is like, it feels like stand-up meets politics.
Yes.
And that's because like, I'm not here to bring thousands of people into a room to say, let's talk about how horrible things are. Like that sounds like the worst night out of your life. But I think also people are consistently surprised by the personality I bring to the work that I do. I'm passionate about politics, but I'm really passionate about being fun at a party.
Yes.
You know, and I think that one of the things that works about Punter and I in many ways is that people feel and know that we're real people with real personality that want to make good things in a bad place that is social media and want to offer young people especially this opportunity to feel like very heard, but also that you don't need to kind of categorize yourself into like serious and then, you know, frivolous. And actually our podcast, Big Small Talk, the title is like, you know, the serious and the frivolous. It brings it together. And always what I'm trying to do is say like, you know, you can have the sort of vegetables in the spaghetti bolognese. You can kind of make things, you know, you can make a lot of good in a place that is traditionally bad and siloed. And that's always what I'm trying to look at doing. So in the future, if everything's settled and I didn't feel like I had a cheek media job anymore, I would absolutely try stand up. It's like, I just love comedy.
I've had that advice from like bigger comedians to me, like older comedians. It was like mixing the veggies with like the ice cream. It's like have the fun stuff and the serious stuff on stage. It just makes it more fun.
I think also that, you know, for a lot of the comedy that I watch, I really aspire and admire. I aspire to, you know, create and speak like, but I also admire comedians who really weave in really political messaging into the work that they do because they're the most effective. I really truly believe that people that just kind of, a lot of the struggle I think with a lot of politicians and journalists is they're on their high horse about what they do and who they are and the opinion they hold. And I'm not. I'm really willing to be wrong and change my mind, but also to bring fun to it. And I know that's really hard right now in the environment that we're in, but I just think if we can't have a laugh and come together and sort of hold hands with people that we disagree with as well we're not going to recover, genuinely. So there needs to be that room for the fun and the insight.
Have you ever had to apologize and be like, guys, we ran this story, we're backing it up, my bad?
I don't think I've ever had something like overtly be incorrect. But then, you know, I remember times maybe 4 or 5 years ago where I've created a piece of content that didn't quite hit the tone. Like I didn't read the room right, you know? And a great example of that is I remember a few years ago, there was like a scientific paper that came out that was asking an ethical question about an issue that affected like women's reproductive rights. And they were posing something that I thought was like, that's fundamentally unethical to even pose the question.
Yeah.
And so I posted like, this is fucked up, basically.
Yeah.
And the comments were like a lot of scientists saying, oh no, like our job in these papers is to actually ask questions that like maybe you would feel are unethical, but are actually exploratory questions. That's the work of scientists. And I felt like, okay, I didn't read the room because I didn't understand.
Yeah.
And I didn't go and ask the right questions of the right people. So there's moments like that that kind of do happen where you're speaking about an industry or a workplace or a particular cause where I don't have the exact experience to commentate accurately, and I probably needed to be a bit more nuanced with what I did. That happens.
During the last election, I saw a viral clip where you were talking about the word influencer.
Yeah.
So you would never ever, because we've had influencers on this podcast and they're like proud with the moniker influencer. But do you think, but then I know comedians who they get called influencers, they go, no, I'm not an influencer.
I think the problem with the word influencer, right, is that it's a real catch-all term.
Yes.
And it's not accurate, right? Because what I also
we need a new word.
But I think
more niche.
one of the things that's tough about it, right, is when I went to the budget last year and there was all this, news headlines about like influencers at the budget, I was like, it's not really fair. A lot of these people are journalists.
Yes.
And you're saying influencers because it's a group of young women that have social media followings. That's unfair as the basket at which you're guiding the public to believe these are people that don't deserve to be in the room. And because that's the insinuation. It's not that the word influencer is bad, it's the way they're using it. So they're using influencer to point to like young women and to make them look stupid or silly or, unworthy of the space. But I also think there are people that are first and foremost influencers. The issue is when you've got a comedian that's been doing stand-up for 5 years and suddenly has an online following, they're then called an influencer first rather than being called a comedian. There are people that have just built a platform influencing, and they are influencers. But it's when you've got journalists that have 100,000 followers, or you've got a business owner that has 300,000 followers, the word first is an influencer. They actually are a person that's built a platform based on something that they're working on. And also, that's not to say there's anything wrong with someone building a platform on influencing, but it's to say that like it's unfair to kind of say everyone's just in this basket of influencer, and we need to actually be able to trawl through and say, oh, actually, there's kind of 10 different categories of person in here that have grown a trusted audience for different reasons. You wouldn't call a talkback radio host an influencer. I don't think Mark Bouris in his very serious business podcast gets called an influencer. Like there's a real like loaded way that they're using the word and who they projected onto.
It's a different weight as well. Like when you hear the word journalist at budget night, you go, oh, journalist, and you hear influencer at budget night, you do go, oh.
Oh, and then
it pricks your antenna a little
You're
bit.
literally going, women 25.
Yes.
They don't have degrees. And that's not because the word influencer means that, but it's because they've driven it home to mean like this misogynistic kind of framing that the subconscious immediately draws that conclusion. And we all kind of have work to do to like overcome that too, but it's not accurate.
When you walk into budget night, do the politicians clock you? Are they going, oh, shit? You're kind of like the angel of death for them a little bit. They're like...
I think I've become a bit of like, I think it's gotten like...
Can they run away? Like what happens? Like, because I see all you guys on budget night and I've seen like, the long tables we have in the discussions, but then also I've seen like Toilet Paper Australia. They're just in a room with like Albanese. Like, is it just kind of like a fate where everyone's running around interviewing?
So it's changed. I've only done it for 2 years now and it changed from last year to this year. But effectively, when we went in this year, we hadn't pitched to have particular interviews with particular politicians. Okay. One of the things that we really wanted to focus on is in the lockup. You're in the lockup, right? Yeah. You're locked in with the papers for a set amount of hours. You don't have your phones. You can't go anywhere. And you're around a round table. But we're not with the other journalists.
Wait, can we pause on that? Because I think listeners wouldn't. So there's an actual lockdown.
Yeah. You can't take the papers anywhere and you can't be connected to the internet.
What?
So you're put in a room for about 5.5 hours.
Okay.
Where you have to put your phone on airplane mode and they bag it and tag it and take it from you, and you can take in your laptops on airplane mode.
Wow.
And you're not allowed to. So you just
it's kind of exciting.
You know what it is?
It is.
And then I know people listening might be like, what a bunch of fucking losers, right? And I go, touche, like that's fine, right?
It feels like when they choose the Pope.
What's it called? It's a C word, isn't it? The Conclave.
Yes,
I love that movie.
That was good.
Awesome. Because it's inherently a political film.
Yes,
too, right? And you're right. It is that sort of process. But what I loved about it was you have this environment where you have to read the room in a different way. You've got these papers, the budget papers, before the rest of Australia has them. And you have to go through and interpret the messaging and understand what the government is delivering. Because you also get things like you get the Treasurer's speech as one document. Then you get last year's budget. And then you get the women's budget statement. And then you get the actual budget. There's like a lot of documents to this.
Yeah.
And so you're actually understanding, okay, what's the branding and marketing that the government's giving you versus what are the actual numbers? And then what do I think the country's going to think of this? What do I think people need to know? And how can I, in the next 4 hours, shape that into a piece of content, whether it's an article or a video, that actually is going to kind of read the room right about how this is going to be received and how I feel about it and what I think my responsibility is to deliver this to, especially like the young women that follow me. So there's a lot of considerations. You're also just without your phone and you're going, this is a weird retreat right now. Like,
because you're all in there together.
Yeah.
No phones.
No phones. But what they do for at least, basically what they do have is they have ministers coming through the room that can kind of give you a 10-minute pitch.
Yeah.
So over the course of like 4 or 5 hours, we went and watched Jim Chalmers, the Treasurer, and Katie Gallagher, the Minister for Finance and Women, give a press conference. We had them come through and answer questions. We had the housing minister. We had, the social services minister. We had everyone come through and kind of be able to respond to questions that we could then go and put into our work or question them on like what was and wasn't included. It is stressful, but I've also realized over they don't all recognize or know everyone in the room.
Yeah.
You usually go around and introduce yourselves, but there is a bit of a moment where for some of them they're like, there she is, I'm a bit stressed meeting them and I don't know what but I also don't know because you've got to realize that the role, especially of the new media, we have to understand that they are trying to woo us.
Yes.
You've seen in the US elections, right? The Democrats are trying to woo influencers. And I hate to use that word, but they are. They're inviting like hundreds of people to like parties and street parties and events and wear the merch and promote the cause, right? In the US, there's very much an influencer, and I mean it in the actual sense of the word influencer, energy around campaigns because you also have to convince people to vote in the first place in the US. So there's different kinds of influencer campaigns. In Australia, I think what Labor's trying to do with bringing new media into the budget is to say, we want young people to access this. And also we know that different outlets, whether it's like financial education platforms, new media platforms, like Toilet Paper Australia, for example, they did kind of, more like endorsements with the Labor Party where they got different politicians to sort of just get on and say that they endorse the platform or something, whereas we're asking about the gas tax.
Yeah.
So there's different roles across the spectrum of like what people are in there to do. And so they are trying to woo many people, but they probably know that I'm going to be the harshest in the room as well.
Do you ever worry you'll get like weaponized or used for a particular policy or cause or party? Like even with Donald Trump's rise, like a big part of him was getting young men through podcasts. Do you ever worry someone will go, hey, come work for us?
Well, I actually think you've got to be aware that that's already happening. And what I mean by that is like my job in media is to receive pitches and talking points. Like every day I get emails from different politicians, from different staffers, from different, stakeholders, whether it's like NGOs, whether it's different like advocacy campaigns. They'll be like, can you talk about this? And it is my job to read that information and understand the campaign they're running and then kind of analyze all the material I'm getting from everyone and determine a right path. Everyone's trying to influence you at all times. But also everything that we see on Instagram every day is an ad. Like most things are an ad for someone's opinion, for someone's brand, for someone's profile. Like it's all ads. It's pretty scary, right? But it is our job to be media literate and be critical thinkers about what we're seeing and why we're seeing it and what the message and agenda is behind it. So I need to be aware that that's happening all the time and then be able to like stick to my guns, know my response, know my place, know my view, have done my due diligence in creating that and then put out what I think is responsible. But also one of the scariest things for me is when I meet like an audience member in the street, they'll come up to me and they'll say, hey, they'll go, you're the only media I consume. And I go, that is so bad.
But it's a great tick for you.
It's a beautiful thing. People mean it in such a beautiful way. But my biggest thing is like, you need to diversify your media diet, right?
Yeah,
you need to be following these 20 people that I recommend, but also follow people and watch things that you really disagree with. Like a lot of people, I remember like one of the best videos I think I've ever made is someone came to me and said, can you remind me why we all hate Peter Dutton? And I could have just made a list of 10 things. And instead I went, if you can't tell me why you hate Peter Dutton, you don't hate Peter Dutton. Like it is, I get that we want to be in our echo chamber and be supported by our group, our tribe.
Yeah.
But one of the fundamental issues with like, the right in America is like they just pick a team, red or blue, and they're very stuck because their system of voting also is reductive. Whereas in Australia, a lot more options, but you need to know why. It can't just be a vibes-based approach. And I really want to encourage people to be like, don't just get your information from me. Don't always agree with me. I don't want you to, you know? That's the problem with a lot of issues on the right is people just go, whatever you say.
Do you think Australia's being Americanized?
Yes, absolutely. We're 1 or 2 years behind the UK and the US always, but we need to follow that model and then watch it bleed in, basically.
But if we're 2 years behind and then One Nation's leading in the polls now, like, so do you see this getting worse?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. I can't be anything but honest. But I'm here to talk about that too.
Yeah.
Like, I'm here to let's lean in. Like, it's my job to not freak out, and it's my job to speak to people about, okay, well, how are we going to deal with this too? You know, and I'm passionate about it. Like, I love my job because I am the person that has parents that are considering voting One Nation. It is my life every day to be speaking to people in different parts of Australia with entirely different experiences and not coming at it with like judgment or like, well, we disagree and we can't talk about it. Like, I have to talk about it every single day, and I love doing it.
All right, Ferg, can I call you Ferg?
Yeah.
Okay. Ferg, kind of the epitome of this podcast is ons and offs. Is there something you're strongly on and something you're strongly off?
Okay, a little bit different. On, speaking to One Nation voters. Off, women proposing to men.
It's a great Venn diagram. Okay, so why are you on speaking to One Nation voters?
I think that we are facing a real crisis in Australia where we're going to shame everyone who's voting differently to us, and we're not going to be able to convince anyone of anything if we aren't willing to reach across the aisle right now and start having better conversations politically. Because my biggest fear is that we're going to demonize, we're going to shut down, we're going to dismiss. And actually, one of the central issues we're facing around One Nation voters is their frustrations have not been heard by the Labor Party or the Liberal Party, and they are sending a very strong message that they are frustrated and they are fed up with working people being left behind in Australia. And they're turning to someone that I think they don't realise is part of the establishment. Pauline Hanson is very similar to Donald Trump. She is co-opting a movement, even though she is a wealthy grifter, and she is co-opting a movement and saying she's not the establishment, when actually she's been the establishment for 30 years, right? She is part of this. And I think what's happening is people feel, in her voter base, feel close to her. They think it's their friend climbing the ladder and beating the establishment, when actually she's an extension of it.
Does it matter where she's come from though? Because if she has come from being a fish and chip shop owner in rural Queensland, like, do you think that carries any weight? Because I do think even conversations I've had with people, a lot of it is like, well, she hasn't come from politics, whereas like a lot of politicians have been staffers or journalists or lawyers, and they're like, she's coming from outside of the entire political sphere traditionally.
I absolutely get it. Like, you know, I talk to my parents about this a lot, who are, you know, have, you know, people in my life are thinking about voting One Nation. And one of the things that's really interesting about it is like, there's this like, but she's just Pauline from Queensland. She's a fish and chip shop owner. She hasn't been that for a very long time. In fact, she's been backed by Gina Rinehart, gifted a plane by Gina Rinehart. She's been propped up by wealthy elites for a 30-year career now. She is grifting on these right-wing movements, and she's attached to these fringe campaigns because they support her financially. This is not the average Aussie. Pauline Hanson is not the Aussie battler. Pauline Hanson is not like working class people in Australia. She has come from there, but it's been a very long time since she was in touch with what the average Australian wants, needs, and is asking for from the political establishment. And I understand that people are saying like, oh, well, you know, we're not getting it from Labor or Liberal. I agree. But I think we need to be having a better conversation about what independent politics looks like in Australia and how we challenge and offer more than just One Nation as the alternate.
Because there has to be people who would vote for One Nation just because I'm going to shatter the major parties.
Yes.
They're not necessarily, I don't like Pauline, but I'm sick of this cost of living. I can't afford to pay for my groceries or my petrol. Why don't I just throw some dice on the board and see what happens?
Absolutely. I think just understanding that central point that a lot of us can find agreement on, that we're all fed up and that we're all sick of this kind of cost of living rising in Australia, the housing situation. Like, we all know that we're heading towards, you know, a really bad, a toxic environment that none of us can afford. We're there. You know, the housing market in Sydney, it's a nightmare. But I think that we need to look at, okay, well, what actually are the policies? And is this person in front of us, Pauline Hanson, is she the person that's actually going to solve it? I don't think that most One Nation voters think she's up to the job. I actually believe that they're sending a message more than they actually firmly have this, you know, vision that she could do it. But I think they lack alternatives, because also things like the independent movement in Australia has been heavily represented in wealthy inner city suburbs by, you know, women who represent a certain demographic from those areas. So like women who may have been Liberal voters in the past now voting for what they perceive as teals. That isn't countrywide. That isn't a nationwide movement that's kind of offering alternates. there needs to be more. And I say that as firm bias, as someone that wants to run as an independent the next election. But it is this conversation we need to have that, like, I understand that there's a lot of baggage from the Greens that people are going, well, I don't believe that they could form government, or they could, you know, like, there's a lot of concerns there too. And I don't think they're doing enough to counter the rise of One Nation either. So we're living in this environment where people are going, well, what is my option? What is the solution? And I go, I get it. In this environment, there doesn't feel like there are many places to turn. So I acknowledge why people think One Nation might be their answer.
But why is there a populist right-wing push, but then the Greens have just kind of stayed the same? I would say almost they seem a little less relevant now than they were like 7 years ago.
I find this really challenging to talk about because a lot of the people that follow me and support Cheek are Greens voters, right?
Yeah.
And I think that one of the things that we need to watch, right, is in the UK, we've seen Zach Polanski as a new leader of the Greens come out and kind of lead a left-wing populist movement. And in New York City, Zoran Mamdani is a great example for like a very staunch left-wing candidate that's been representative of the people. I think that there is a disconnect between the Greens voter base and membership base and the elected representatives of the Greens. And I also think that the Greens have done a poor job in communicating their policies and in actually offering an alternate. I don't think they actually clearly communicate what they represent. And I think someone like David Pocock actually has been the response the Greens haven't given. So I think David Pocock as an independent is someone who's come out and said, I back in this, and this. I want people before politics. I want communities represented. And here's how we're going to get there. And just speaks plainly without bringing ideology or sort of like a lot of the language that we associate with the left into it. He leaves it out and he just goes forward with what he believes is the change he wants to see in his area. And I think that practical, actionable messaging that feels kind of, you know, empty of, you know, political ideology or influence, but just for the people, that's gained a lot of traction. And he's a very popular person in Australian politics.
People love him.
Yeah, they love him.
They love David
because he's
Pocock.
plain speaking, he's reasonable, and he's not leaning into it.
And he's a wallaby.
Of course.
It helps.
I mean, you know, if I could lift big rocks with my shirt off, I'm not sure it would get me to Parliament, but you know,
it almost makes him apolitical in a way, like that he played for the Wallabies.
Well, I think it makes him a national icon.
Yes.
But he also represents a really healthy masculinity that we're lacking in Australia as well.
Yeah.
Like, he's a dad, he's fit, he represents what a lot of men in Australia aspire to. Like, he really represents like the average punter in many ways too. And I think what the Greens do, which, you know, I understand why as well, is they've really spoken directly to their base, but not really well outside of it. Whereas I think David Pocock kind of gets above this idea of sides and systems and just speaks to people. And I think that almost the reason in my mind that the Greens aren't able to build that traction is because there are so many people like Pocock, like Jackie Lambie even, who are just plain speaking and authentic and really represent a community. And they've really been able to kind of like select their focus areas and kind of just drive home a message about putting people first. And I think that's kind of contrasted poorly for the Greens.
Are you in a difficult position because, say, your base is Greens voters, that if you did an interview, say, with Pauline Hanson, even if it was like a great interview and your on was talking to One Nation voters, wouldn't people come at you for like giving her a platform?
There will always be criticism of.
Would you interview Pauline Hanson?
I would, and I have asked. I think it's interesting, the criticism around Pauline Hanson from my own like audience base, and I would say my audience is a really interesting mix of Labor, Indian, Green voters.
Yeah, I'd say it's more diverse than just all Greens voters.
Absolutely,
for sure.
But there's tension between those things, right? Because there's just different options in different areas. So there's going to be a lot of like pushback on me for saying certain things, which I understand. But for me, it's like, well, it depends on the electorate you live in the state you live in, what's available to you, right? But with this pushback around who I interview, like I copped a lot of criticism for interviewing the Prime Minister before the last election. And that's because people would say, like, you're giving him a platform. And it's interesting, like, he's the Prime Minister. He has a platform. It's my job to take an opportunity and ask questions the mainstream media is not asking him that are relevant for the audience that I have. So, like, I used an opportunity that I had to ask him about genocide in Gaza that Israel's perpetrating, right? And people would say you shouldn't have interviewed him in the first place. And I said, I asked a question that I'm proud to have asked because no one else was. And so if people are going to disagree with me on that basis, that's okay. I can accept that. But it doesn't mean I need to change my mind or not do it. I think we also exist in this world where people are like, well, I've said you can't and you did, so I'm going to unfollow you. You're going, okay, what about the 95% of things we agree on? You know? And I think it's really important to be able to say, well, it's okay. You don't have to agree with my decision as a person, but like I have a job to do. And if I interviewed Pauline Hanson, I would be asking questions that I think the mainstream media is not doing. And I would be taking that interview as an opportunity to speak to her voters, to be able to speak to my voters about what she is and isn't offering, and to be able to challenge and push back. And so, like, I would absolutely take that opportunity even if it was met with criticism.
And also, Pauline Hanson, yeah, she has a platform.
Yeah, like
she's a member of parliament.
This
so
idea of, like, giving someone a platform I think the idea of a platform is interesting because, you know, I criticised recently Carl Stefanovic's interview with Pete Evans.
Okay.
And the reason I said that he was giving Evans a platform is because Carl was just getting in there and shaking his hand and having a laugh and, like, scratching each other's backs, right? If you're giving someone a platform because you're letting them off on an easy ride, that's one thing. But getting into a room and actually saying, nah, I've got these 10 questions and I'm going to push back on you and I know my facts. I'm here to have a hard discussion. That's not giving someone a platform. That, you know, Pauline Hanson has one of the biggest platforms in the country. That's using my platform to push back and ask hard questions that aren't getting asked elsewhere.
And also Pete Evans is in obscurity.
Yeah.
So coming onto, you know, one of the biggest shows.
Yeah.
Would you go on Carl's Ask Punters last week after he did? He said he regretted it because it became an entertainment rather than a policy discussion.
I would absolutely do it. Yeah. And I think that, you know, I don't think Carl will ask me. And I think if he does, it might be a gotcha like what he did to Punter.
So who would be there, do you think?
I don't know. But also I would still take that opportunity because I believe in my ability to articulate my position. And, like, I'm not scared to do this. I think I can have a conversation with anyone. You know, like, I pride myself on, like, a lot of people who are right-wingers might come into my comment section and be like, oh, you're a woke lefty. I'm like, I literally have called them on the phone. One of my methods this year is when people troll me, I call them.
What?
Yeah. So on Instagram, there's a call function. When men, like, abuse me on the internet, I will just call them.
Wow.
Not one has picked up.
That's a good move.
In fact, every single one of them has text back something like, fuck you, and then blocked me.
They're scared.
They won't talk to me. But if you're going to abuse me on, like, through a private profile or with a picture of your dog as your profile picture without your real name, I will call you. Not to abuse you. I will not yell at you. But, like, say it to me.
Yes.
I dare you to say it to me when we're having a conversation because these people can't. They have all this
None of them
protection
have.
and insulation. None of them have. Not a single person's picked up.
Imagine if you guys had a really nice conversation on the phone.
I think we would. Like, I genuinely think that one of the things I'm most passionate about in this world is, like, I would like to have a beer with basically anyone and I would like to find out why you feel the way you do because often our political views don't come from a policy position. They come from an emotional experience. And if I can access that, I can talk to anyone.
There's a theory about that like the innovation of text language rather than like speak language is affecting the discourse.
Yeah.
And it's quite a modern thing to send someone a digital message.
Yes, but also we've got to realise that in comment sections, you're not responding to a person, you're performing for the public's view.
Yes, yeah.
And when people are commenting, like, I know I do it, like, have some self-awareness. If I'm commenting on Instagram on something, I know that potentially thousands of people will see that. So the way you craft, the way you use language, a lot of people in comment sections are looking for, like, a gotcha or to one up. It's so funny, the amount of comments where people go, you forgot this. I go, it was a 2-sentence tweet. Like, I forgot the one specific thing that you wanted me to mention. You're commenting to one up me that you remembered. No, like... There's just a lot of performance in how people are viewed and how they want to be seen on social media, no matter who you are or where you come from. And I think a little bit of awareness and sympathy and, like, understanding, I can get it. I'm not offended personally by these comments because I know why it's happening and where it's coming from too. So
you want to run at the next election? Is that the vision?
Yeah.
Why do you want to get out of journalism?
Oh, see, I never got into this because I particularly wanted, like, I'm not a journalist, right? Like, I also don't like using that word because I don't want to offend the craft of journalism in many ways. Like, I see myself as a commentator, like radio talkback hosts. They talk, you know, about their views. They talk to politicians. They engage with the public. They're really trying to facilitate interesting discussion in the public square about the issues of the day. I see myself as in many ways doing that on social media. I'm not here to tell someone they're right or wrong. I'm here to share an opinion and have some soundboarding about it, you know, and create a better dialogue on social media. And I am really passionate about Australian politics and making the world a better place and having better discussions. And I think politics is broken and I believe in independent politics. And my view is I've built this platform and I feel like I have a responsibility or an obligation to then go out and say, I've done a lot of yelling from the outside, but what does it actually look like to contest and try and make change from the inside too? And, like, again, I'm kind of not announcing what exactly that's going to look like yet. But over the next 2 years, it's like about building Cheek out so that it can continue without me.
Okay.
And that I can have a crack at this as well. And maybe lose. Like, you know, I believe I can win. But it's about almost showing people, like, what does the reality look like of getting on the ground and speaking to people and door knocking and having conversations and building community rather than just existing online yelling about things as well.
So if you went in as an independent, have you, like, talked about, like, funding? Like, would that be through, like...
Aren't you a journalist. This is great. But this is part of the issue, right? With the independence that they're facing. There's currently
you need money to run. That's the difficult thing.
There's a cap on donations right now for independence, right? And so one of the interesting conversations that's happening is like, who will you and won't you take funding from? You know, like the Greens don't take money from corporations, and you know, particular independents work with different organizations and backers. And I think for me, like, it's about as much community grassroots funding as possible. But also, like, there have been, you know, we're probably 2 years out from an election right now. And so what we're really discussing, and like the team I'm building, is like, okay, well, what is the mission and value statement of what we will and won't do? And how do we run a legitimate grassroots campaign that is genuinely reflective of like people power as well? So like, I'm passionate about having a crack, but it's all in that kind of planning stage right now too.
Would you ever like fall within a conglomerate of a party? Like if the Greens said run for us, Labor said run for us, would you be open to that?
I've been a member of Labor and the Greens. Like, I've volunteered on campaigns for Greens, Labor, and I've worked with independents as well. But my view is, like, after doing that, it gave me all this knowledge and experience about how things operate in these different spheres. And ultimately, like, my decision then was independence the way forward.
All right, let's jump off politics for a second. You're off.
Okay. I say this because I know it's controversial, that I wrote it in my book, actually, that like, I don't think that women should be proposing to men. And I do mean it as a joke. I have had friends do this and I go, I love you so much, and I would love to be invited to your wedding still. I love you. But the point behind it is, I worry that part of the feminist movement has believed that, you know, in order to achieve equality, women should do more things that, like, to subvert gender roles and gender norms. And my worry is we're just doing things for men.
Okay. So you think that it's like, for like what, like a performative proposal?
I don't think it's performative. I just worry that, like, the man, it's like the one thing that they're expected to, like,
the one thing we
vulnerably plan and do, and like the most beautiful thing. And I worry about like women thinking like, I'm going to subvert a norm by doing it myself. And I'm going, Queen, we should make men do more things. Like, one of my biggest worries in like feminist spaces is women have taken on working and household management and all the things to be like, this is feminist. And I'm like, actually, the most feminist thing we can do is get men into the home and doing more things that women are picking up. And I think I use, like, I know it's a bit of like a controversial thing to say about the proposal, but I'm like, I kind of use that as an example of like, are we really subverting, or are we just doing more things for men? You know, I just...
Are you engaged? Are you in a relationship?
No, I'm in a relationship. I am not engaged, but like, loud and clear.
So if your partner, like, you would never propose to your partner?
No.
Okay.
No.
Okay.
I'm not like if we didn't get married, it wouldn't matter to me. Like, I'm kind of like, whatever. Like, I'd like to get married. I think it's a beautiful thing and an expression of love. Yeah. But I'm not dying on the hill of yes or no on that. I just know I am not getting on my knee. Do you think it's not happening?
It is interesting that marriage rates, like, they're not declining. Like, everyone, even in like modern society, everyone still wants the wedding.
I think there is an issue with wedding culture that, like, people just want to spend money and have a beautiful day. But I also think that, you know, a lot of it, I think, if you could never post that on Instagram, what would your wedding actually look like?
Oh, damn.
Like, genuinely, if you never posted the photos to Instagram, what do you want? Genuinely. I think that's not a question. Like, I saw a stat today that the average wedding in Australia costs $38,000. That will not be me. Like, I no matter what, like, even if I was a wealthy person, I think the idea of putting that much pressure on a day is not for me. And again, I think that in an era where divorce is so high, where relationship breakdowns are so common, the act of getting engaged and having a wedding is such a beautiful, optimistic act. So I firmly believe, I think I would like to get married and have a wedding, just for the fact that it's such a beautiful thing to commit to someone in that way. But I think in terms of like the religious viewpoints and the spend, it's just not, I'm against it. And I think more women need to be like, nah, like that planning, that pressure, that, you know, the hope and the commitment, beautiful, but this expense.
I'd have a panic attack.
I have a panic attack just thinking about it.
It's too much.
Yeah. I mean, for me, it's like the family dynamics. I'm like, oh my God, where does the cutoff? Like, I admire the people who've like planned and like executed beautiful weddings. I think it is, but it's a business.
But then it's just over after the day, you know?
Yeah. But that industry, that business model, it's a lot of pressure.
We get a lot of dating questions on this podcast. How did you meet your partner?
Bumble, actually.
Wow.
It's so funny. I love my partner so much. He's just the best man in the world. And one of the things is that, sorry to you, I know I said my partner was I know we're friends.
It'd be weird.
But I was like, you're the best man in the world, actually. But we met and he didn't know about my work. Oh. He's a very political person, but like he did not know about my work, which I think is great.
So first date, he didn't know.
He did because
research.
One of my photos at the time was like with a microphone in it. Okay. And he went to his male housemate and he was like, do you know like a Hannah with a podcast?
Yeah.
And his friend went, are you fucking date with Hannah Ferguson. Like, that's what? And then like said, you have to watch Fleabag, you have to read the ABC, not the AFR today, like funny stuff like that. And then we went on the date, and after our third date, he said, I looked up your profile, and like my mum does follow Cheek and you. Is that like okay? And I was like, it's fantastic, actually. That makes my life a whole lot easier. So we imagine like meeting your mother-in-law for the first time, and you're like, we've known each other for a while. Like, it's kind of hilarious.
Well, that's the hardest thing, I think, if you have any sort of public profile and like so much content, is that going to the first date, you're aware. I was lucky that I met my girlfriend before I kind of blew up online. So
so how does that go then?
Well, I think it was better because then you grow together in a way, rather than being like, here's this catalogue of all.
Well, I think
everything I've ever done.
I think that was a stress point in my past dating life too, because I've had a partner in the past where he knew my work beforehand, and then it broke down, and I felt like maybe there was a disparity between who he wanted to be and who he actually was because of the presence of my role as well, and what I do. And that's hard to rebuild trust from afterwards when you're dating again as well. But I think with my partner, like, he knew of my work, but he didn't go and look. He's a very like secure person that like he didn't go and read my books. He didn't go and like engage or listen to the podcast. He just was very like, I am focused on getting to know you and not accessing this information, finding out about you from external sources, which was weird when like two of his closest female friends had come to one of my shows before.
Wow.
And like that was so lovely then to go to the pub and meet his friend group.
Yeah.
And they were like, we did come to your first book launch. And I was like, that's kind of awesome for me to be able to meet these people, but it's hilarious for my partner to be like not making it weird and trying to just like not engage. So I really respect that, because if roles were reversed, I know I'd do the stalk,
Yeah, my girlfriend said I had to do a stalk. She's like, you kind of have to, just to make sure there's nothing rogue there.
Yeah.
And I was like, I fully understand that.
I respect that, but it wasn't because she was trying to seek out like, who is this person, how successful. It was just because she was like making sure she hadn't made some shady comments in the past.
Kind of, yeah.
Yeah, I love that. I respect that.
Because I think it's a big thing, especially like in modern relationships, is like the elevation of your partner is so important. Yeah. You almost just have to put everything down and be like, I'm cheerleader. Yeah. No matter what happens, like just go for it.
Yeah.
Because otherwise, like, you'll have the resentments will come in, and it's like, it's never positive.
Yeah. I'm with you. Like, you've kind of got to have this like equal ground. And I think that makes sense why a lot of like the Jacob Elordis of the world are always going to date the Kendall Jenners, because it's like he can't just go on a random date. Like, it would take a very secure person to be like, I don't really care.
Well, Lana Del Rey, isn't she married to?
Guy.
Yeah, that stood out. But that was a news story.
I don't think he would have known her beforehand. Like, I can imagine him being like, what?
Going to one of her concerts.
I'm married to Lana Del Rey. She came to the farm. Like,
has Bumble ever reached out and be like...
Yeah, they're a long-term sponsor. Thank you, Bumble.
That's great.
They're not sponsoring this podcast right now, but like keep it on their... No, but it's been really nice, because then when they did sponsor our podcast or like my live show, I was like, well, this is a genuine endorsement.
Yes.
Like, I met a really lovely person on
They
Bumble.
changed my life.
Yeah, they did actually. Because also, weirdly, he wasn't on any other apps. And I think that usually you're on multiple, right? Like, did you meet your partner through an app?
No, we met through... I would say through friends, and then it was one of those things that I was doing a comedy gig upstairs at a pub. We ran into each other there, and we just kept running into each other in the same part of Melbourne.
Nice.
Yeah, it was kind of organic. And
I was going to say, so rare these days.
Yes.
To not have it be a swipey. Like, that's lovely.
Some quick fire ons and offs.
Okay, yep.
Okay, some of these are random, some are not. You can just say which one. Okay, so you don't have to say on or off. So Jetstar or Virgin?
Virgin.
If you had to choose, Pauline Hanson or ScoMo?
ScoMo. More easily pressured.
Mecca or Sephora?
Mecca.
Sydney or Melbourne?
Sydney.
Okay.
God, these are easy. You should have gone. Like, I was really worried. I was like, am I getting cancelled? But that was like, I'm actually just, I finally got to frequent flyer status. Like, I fly a lot, and finally I got into the Virgin Lounge, so I have to like endorse, like,
I've flown so much to a point that I've just chosen Jetstar.
Yeah.
That I don't know, because I'm thinking about all the points I've missed from if I had flown Virgin. I'm booking ahead, so it's not even like a price difference. I'm committed to Jetstar.
No, I get that. It's like I've gotten every Jetstar deal ever. Like, I did the like $300 to Japan return. Like, I don't think that's even possible anymore. But I've like done it. You know, I've done the 4 a.m. flight that goes like for 17 hours for no reason. Respect.
What's the worst part about being Hannah Ferguson?
I think just this. Wow, vulnerable. I think just maybe the deep fear that like someone might meet me and be like, oh, like disappointing, or like not the person. Like, I think in dating maybe even it's like a lot of people would go on dates with me and wouldn't tell me that they knew me. And then I get on the date with them and I felt like they were trying to find out something or like discover and I think what I pride myself on is that I really hope when someone meets me in person, they go, oh, it's exactly what I expected. But I think there's probably a fear that I'm like disappointing or not enough. So I think like the hard part is probably just like the worry that like someone's built you up to be something that you can never be, I think. But it's also wonderful that people would think of me in a high regard in the first place. But I think the hardest thing is also just balancing that like you're always going to disappoint someone through the content you make or meeting them in person. Like you can never kind of be what people have made you out to be necessarily. And I don't feel like the most politically literate person in the country. I'm still learning a lot of the time too. I think there's probably just a vulnerability as like a 27-year-old woman that, you know, I don't want to let people down.
I would say that's even like before the podcast, we're talking about some comedians who know they're different online to like in real person. I think everyone has that. Even when I finish a stand-up show, I've had people go, oh, you're very different to what you were on stage 10 minutes ago. I'm like, oh, I'm exhausted.
Yeah, it's,
you know?
It's a difference in energy.
Yes.
But it's also like, you know, in high school sometimes, this is a random example. In high school sometimes you're like messaging someone that you don't talk to actually at school.
Yeah, they were the best times ever on MSN.
It's weird, right? Where you're like, should we hug behind a tree in your age? You know, like some sort of stuff when you're like dating and you're young.
Yeah.
Or like there's certain people on Facebook who'd be like posting all the time, but then the quietest person in the class. Some people just have a big disparity between like online and real life persona. And I actually think like I'm pretty close to exactly the same in both. But I also worry that like sometimes I'll run into someone in like Woolies and they'll be like, oh, Hannah. And literally I've said like, hey, blah, blah, and then I've walked away. I've had a woman before. I went up 10 minutes later back in Woolworths and I've gone, I just want to let you know I'm really hungover. And like, I absolutely promise you I have more personality. I'm really embarrassed that the sort of hey I just gave you, but rock on, queen. And she was like, dude, same, like it's okay. And I was like, oh, I'm just so worried that like the disparity.
I reckon you'll get to a point where you won't care.
Probably, but like I still just want like the people that come up to me are always like the people that like look like they could be in my friendship group, right? They're always like queen, and I'm like queen. It's always like in King Street in Newtown or like in Marrickville somewhere. I'm like exactly who I expected would be like, you know. So there's always like I want to be the friend that they, you know, they feel close to. There's a closeness in the work I do, which I love. And if I'm hungover, I'm like, I'm so sorry, dude.
Have you ever had someone come up and they're a hater? That would be scary. I haven't had that, but I'm scared of it.
No.
Because it's always online, but it's never in real life. And I'm like, it has to happen. It'll be at my most vulnerable.
I've never had it happen. I'm sure it will one day. But I also have had people comment or message me after to be like, just want to let you know I saw you at this cafe and like I think your opinion's shit. And I'll be like, why didn't you come up to me and say it? I'll literally just, this is like the calling function. I'm like, just like you weren't willing to come up to me and say, hey, because you didn't want to disrupt my breakfast and you know I'm a real person with real feelings and emotions and you didn't want to have that conversation. But you're really willing to try and, again, publicly out me or like hate on me to get likes or attention. And I'll just comment back and be like, next time, would love to come and chat to you over breakfast.
I think a lot of people are going to take up that mantle of calling the troll.
I'm not sure if I'd recommend it because I also don't want to like,
might be unsafe.
I don't want to encourage people to do that, obviously. But from my perspective, like it is my job to speak to people with a lot of different views. And I kind of love that energy of like, let's have a chat. But they won't. And I think that says everything. And it makes my life and job a lot easier when I realize that like all these people that are willing to just sling shit don't want to talk about it. And I go, okay, well, I can live my life knowing that like they're not actually willing to talk back to me. It's just a moment, you know?
To close the pod, what's next?
Oh my God.
What are the dreams?
The dreams?
Yeah.
Hiring a few new people for the team?
Yeah.
Planning the campaign? Going on a live national tour later this year.
Saw that.
It's all going to come out soon. But yeah, so there's a lot happening.
I think Punters, because Punters was on your live show.
Yeah, he was.
And he's like, I think that Hannah's doing another live tour.
Punter,
like,
thank you for the promo.
It's like, I hope I get
invited,
brought back on. He's like,
great.
Can you ask her if I bombed or not?
He did a really good job.
That's good.
But Punter and I can just get on a stage and it's like, we'll have lunch and I'll be like, this is exactly what the show was like. 'Cause we don't really care. We're just like, oh, you're wrong about this. You know, like, and I love that. That's like my favorite friendships. Yeah.
Awesome. Well, Hannah Ferguson, thank you so much for coming on the podcast. Your ons and offs are great.
Thank you for your gold.
I'm excited to see if my girlfriend will propose to me.
Oh, I'm really sorry. I don't mean it cancel about that. I really do support girlfriends proposing. I just think like stop doing more things for men.